You set the gold standard for your business. Your website should do the same. Wix puts you at the helm so you can enjoy the creative freedom of designing your site just the way you want. Want someone to bounce your ideas off? Talk with AI to create a beautiful site together. Generate on brand content, images, media, and simply change or fine tune any of it along the way. Whatever your business, manage it from one place and tie it all together with a personalized domain name. Gear up for success with a brand that says you best. You can do it yourself on Wix.
Have you ever had to put your plans on hold due to symptoms of generalized myasthenia gravis, or GMG? Like taking that weekend trip, talking with friends, or enjoying a meal. Learn about a treatment option that may help. Visit treatgmg.com to learn more. That's treatgmg.com.
Empire.
And on the third day, the Commanders added more speed. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. Go to ESPN, go to ESPN.com just to get analysis on every Commander's draft pick. Also, you can get, it's one-stop shopping to find analysis of every draft pick in the NFL. So you want to find out what the Eagles did, what the Giants did, the Cowboys did, go to ESPN.com, check out the draft coverage. All our reporters were given updates, analysis on every pick, including myself. So it's all there. Let's get to the Commanders' day 3 picks because that's what you want to know. They did add speed. Let's go. They added receiver Jaylen Lane from Virginia Tech, also a returner, pretty big key, fast, 4.34 guy. They added linebacker Kane Madrano from UCLA, fast. They added running back Jakori Merritt from Arizona, also 4.45 guy. So that's what they did on day 3. What they didn't do, they didn't add more picks. I thought going into the draft that they might end up with more than 5 picks. They did not. They ended up with 5 picks because in a couple cases, they felt like the value was just too good to then, you like a guy, you don't want to trade out of that pick. That seemed to be what kept happening. There were definitely a couple times they had an opportunity to trade out of their pick. They did not want to. For Connolly, for Amos, they could have explored the trades. Didn't want to do that because they like the guy. If you like the guy, you take the guy. And rather than just getting maybe a couple guys you don't like quite as much, take the guys you like. That's how you build a good team. Anyway, but they ended up with 5 picks. They did not add an edge rusher. Now, before this, there was a podcast, I think early in the week, where I did say, would it shock me if they didn't take one? No. The positions I thought for sure they would take: offensive line, running back. Now they waited till the 7th round to take the running back, but I felt pretty secure that that was a spot that they wanted to address with the edge rusher. It was certainly something I've been told before that they wanted to address it, yes, but they weren't going to panic if they couldn't find the guy that they wanted. And a couple of times, like there were guys that maybe they would have liked, but you liked somebody else more. And again, you take the guy you like more because that's how you build a good roster. Anyway, so they didn't get the edge rusher. So are there ways they can still do that? They can address it? Yes. Now, could you have taken one late? Sure, but that guy's not going to, they've got guys like that here. Andre Jones, Javonte Jean-Baptiste. That's what we're talking about there. So you're going to take a guy that you feel can contribute to your roster this year. And I do think like a guy like, I think Jakori could be a guy that could come in and possibly help them. Got to see him in pads first. He didn't play. Well, I'll get into all his story in a minute, but could he be a guy? But like, you're not going to get an edge guy who's going to come in and help you there. You can get a guy next year too, who could come in and be a bigger help next year than a 6th or 7th round edge guy would be next year. Makes sense? So anyway, the comps I said, Andre Jones, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, that's kind of what you'd be getting later in the draft. So if you didn't get one high, it wasn't surprising to me that you didn't get one at all. So where do you go? Is it Von Miller? Is it Zadarius Smith? There are some veterans out there in free agency. You're not going to come in and get a guy that's going to get you 10, 12, 13 sacks, but maybe you can get a guy that can add to the mix. And again, as I told you yesterday, or as I talked about yesterday, I think they have stronger depth along the front. I think as a pass rush group, but I don't think it's going to be much worse than last year. I think should be on paper a better run stopping group. I don't think it's going to be a worse group rushing the passer. So could you bring in one more guy to add to that mix who can go out and get you maybe 7, 8, 9 sacks and just make it a more effective group rather than having that one guy like, okay, dude, you got to go get it, right? But, you can do some stuff with Luvu, right? You can do some stuff there. But so I think that's what we're looking at here. And Lance Newmark told us afterwards, like they obviously have boards updated about guys who are still free and available. And those are guys that maybe you bring in, now that the draft is over. That's what you start looking at. So they can still address it. And would you rather have a Zadarius Smith, a Von Miller, or would you rather have a 6th or 7th round defensive end? Well, clearly you're going to want the veteran because they can help you this year. The 6th or 7th round pick as an edge rusher, probably not going to help you a whole lot. So anyway, that's part of the thought process there. So with 5 picks, was it a good draft? Listen, man, that stuff takes time. I'm not into grades. I think there are guys that they got who can start. Connolly, Amos, they got guys who can contribute. Lane, I think Madrano, I think can contribute. I think possibly Jakori can contribute. So I think it's a good draft, and I think they got guys who I think are pretty solid. Takes time, as you know. All right, so let's take a little bit of a look again. Entering the draft, I did think they would get a lineman and a running back for sure, and a cornerback too. So they did. With Amos, they got that. One of the guys I like, Carlin Vigors, is a cornerback they signed as an undrafted free agent. As I'm recording this, they're still in the process of signing guys. In fact, why don't I tell you a few of the guys that they have signed already? So one of them was Vigors. And then let's see, Robert McDaniel, defensive back. He's another guy. He's an HBCU guy, Jackson State. They signed Central Florida defensive tackle Ricky Barber, and then NC State offensive lineman Tim McKay. McKay had a few options, had a lot of options actually, as did Vigor. So those are guys that they've already signed. Again, I'm recording this after the draft, so they're going to be a lot more to check out. You can go check the Twitter feed, whatever. When it's all official, we'll put the list out because sometimes these guys agree to deals and then they find something else. But right now, this is what's going on. So one of the things I liked with this, it seems, and now Adam Peters is very much a stick to your board, go with the best guy, and that's kind of what he grew up. They did when he was in Denver. They did that, and for sure. So like it's been part of his MO for a while, and I do think that they were pretty. It seems like they were pretty much sticking to that board. There's no way for me to know, but it's not like again, a lot of times they set up those boards horizontally, so it's not like it's always boom, here's a guy, take it, boom, go. You do have to make a decision sometimes if the guys are kind of ranked in the same area, and then you go with the guy that you say you feel can contribute more or maybe has a better shot to earn a roster spot, especially when you're picking later in the draft. Amos, a guy that fell to them in the second round because Connolly they felt could go higher. Amos they felt could go higher. That doesn't mean every team saw him that way because there was a reason they're available, but definitely a few teams did, which is why they were a lot of times projected higher than where they eventually went. For Amos, for sure. But so and again, for them, good value. Drafted a couple more captains, drafted, guys who are considered leaders. That was a big emphasis last year. It remains an emphasis this year, or it's just kind of the guys they gravitate to. So, there you go. And I think, they got it again today on Saturday. They took a guy, Lane, can come in and contribute right away as a returner. Madrano could come in right away and contribute as a special teams player. Listen, man, he's a 6th-round pick. There's no guarantee here, and there are other guys there. Dominique Hampton is a guy that's kind of a similar type of role potentially. They both kind of have that strong safety linebacker type body and speed or whatever. Madrano, I think, is faster. Then you have Jordan McGee, but Jordan McGee, I think, is a different kind of linebacker than what Madrano is. But anyways, so let's take a look at today's picks. Let's start with Jaylen Lane. Talked to one special teams coach, is like he can run, but he did feel like he was a better punt returner than a kick returner. And I think when you watch him, like he's really good at weaving in the open field, like and weaving in a tight area. He doesn't waste a lot of movement, but he good again, weaves. That's the one thing that kind of kept jumping out at me. And I think this is good for Larry Izzo, the special teams coach. Like all these coordinators are getting a guy that can help them. And Izzo got a Lane for sure. Good speed, 4.34 guy. And I think like this is, hey, we talked to Lane afterwards. This is what he had to say about his abilities as a returner and using that speed.
My confidence and, I protect the ball. Just being back there, I feel like, I can make any play and any catch and, ultimately take it to the crib. That's what you want to do as a returner. And so, yeah, being back there, I'm just very confident. And, I feel like I'm going to be able to help, score some touchdowns in the return game for the Commanders.
You think you're going to be okay playing receiver for Jayden Daniels?
Oh, I think I'm going to be 100% okay with that. Yeah, that's it's really exciting, man. Just watching what, he's done through college and last year's rookie season. And, it's crazy. Like Terry is one of my favorite receivers. Debo, he's a South Carolina native. So, this is a dream come true, man.
So there you go. He makes guys miss in the open field as well. And you saw that, like, I think when you watch him as a receiver, the way Tech used him, and also on punt returns, like that seemed to be something he did very well. He can be kind of a gadget guy for Cliff Kingsbury, especially watching. And I think his role can be expanded from what he had at Virginia Tech. And I think Kingsbury is very good at finding ways to use guys like Lane, and also it just put him in good spots. At Tech, he was stretching the field as much horizontally as he was vertically. A lot of end arounds, a lot of reverses, a lot of underneath stuff. So a lot of times, like, option where he's running out in the flat, quarterback can decide to run or throw to him on the run, right? Like a zone read where you add that third option. So you got the option of handing off, keeping the ball, or maybe just kind of dumping a pass to the receiver or whomever. He was in that role a few times as well. Definitely aligned in the backfield a couple times. So he's not. There were sometimes it was a little bit like a Deebo Samuel, except that one, he's not Deebo Samuel. Two, wasn't exactly running the ball between the tackles. Just there sometimes maybe lining up in certain areas, but getting in the ball on the move or on the run at times, not a ton, but maybe once a game or so, just to create something different for the defense. But it usually is an end arounds or reverses. I think that's something you could do here for sure. And then there were definitely times they'd send him in motion, trying to draw the defense, trying to draw the eyes of the defense away because he's got speed. You have to honor that. And then opening up maybe for some runs up the middle. Definitely saw that as well. Again, stretches as much horizontally as vertically. I would have liked to have seen him expand the game a little bit more for him. I don't know that you had the quarterback play to do that down there, and that's going to be something good here. There are times like if you can get that guy on some mesh routes and just create situations where he can run across the field, run away from a defensive back possibly, and give him a chance to run after the catch. Something that Jayden Daniels does very well is hitting him in stride, hitting him on the proper shoulder to lead him into more yards. That could help him. So, but I think the instant contribution will come as a punt returner. And I think they clearly need that. They do have other guys who can return kicks, and he can do that. But I think the stronger impact will be as a punt returner for sure. And then it's just how he fits in as a receiver. Well, they do have, you got McLaurin, you got Debo, you got Noah Brown, you got KJ Osborne, you got Luke McCaffrey. So there are other guys that can come in and play, but because of the speed, you'd like to find ways. By the way, he played mostly out of the slot. Now he says he can play outside. We'll see how it goes, but it looks like out of the slot was a good spot for him, and it could maybe create some different sort of looks for this team. But speed, that's what he's got, and it's good because you look at what they did with the line with Josh Connolly, getting a guy who can, and then also you have Tunsil, you have Connolly, you have Coleman going somewhere else where he's probably going to, again, going to guard. I think he can be a really good guard. So you've strengthened your line. You've given Jayden Daniels more time to throw. Get him a guy with speed that can do something with the ball when you hit him down the field, wherever it is. It could be a deep crosser, but if you have the time, you can start to run away from people. That's why you build that offensive line. Then you get a line that can help. You have better run blocking. It helps Brian Robinson, helps Eckler. Jakori would help Jakori as well. So There you go. That's why you do that. But again, when you want to get guys with speed, you got to give them time to get the ball down the field. Now you've got it. And he is, I know somebody brought up De'Ami Brown. He's faster than De'Ami Brown. I don't, we'll see what kind of, De'Ami was a pretty tough guy, but he is a little bit faster than what De'Ami timed. All right, now Kane Madrano, linebacker from UCLA, went into college as a receiver, switched to linebacker. He moves like a skill guy. When you watch him, he had an interception return for a touchdown. I can't remember which game, but he looked like when he caught the ball, first of all, he had to drop into coverage. I did tweet it out. I can't remember the game, but I did tweet it out. But when he drops into coverage, fluid dropping into that, reaches up, catches the ball, and then looks like a skill guy running the ball because that's his body size. I mean, he looks like a big receiver running the ball. And he's really good speed for a linebacker. I think he was the fastest timed linebacker at the combine. So you've got a guy that he can cover. Like that's another thing. Like that's where if you remember, I talked about a couple linebackers that Carson Schlesinger also at UCLA. So there were a couple of UCLA guys, Femi Oladaju, that guys that I liked that I thought they could work here. Well, they got the other guy. So, but what they're looking for, like with Schlesinger, one of the big things was coverage ability. That's what Madrano offers as well as special teams, because you get those bigger guys that can run. That's always a big help. And I think that's good. But with that speed and the size, I think there's some flexibility with the role you can play. He played big nickel at UCLA. We heard that term for a few years now, obviously before Dan Quinn got here, but that's something they do. He has good change of direction. And this is one of the things, like, if a guy like this hits. Now, when we talk to Madrano, he's going to feel like, of course, he can make this team. He can be a contributor. But if you have a guy like this is what he says can happen for the defense and why it can be an advantage to have a guy his size with his speed on the field and listen to his confidence about what he can do in coverage.
Right, being able to, like I said, kind of stay in a 4-3 defense and not go to a nickel or 4-2-5 and be able to stick with those running backs and those tight ends and some of them slots gives us I think it gives just the team a better opportunity to be able to have 3 linebackers on the field and not feel like we kind of take a dip and have to go into a traditional base type of thing. And like you said, skill set wise, I think I'm one of the best at covering tight ends and running backs.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we've just started the NBA and NHL playoffs, which has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB, NHL, and the UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and a live casino. Bet online. The game starts here.
So he adds a different dynamic to this defense that they didn't have. Like I said, Hampton has some of those skills. He's moving from safety. We'll see if he gets it this year. It's a big year for him to show that he can do it. You're adding more competition for that role. McGee is more of a backup. It's going to be more of a backup to Bobby Wagner, a guy that right now would be the heir apparent to Bobby Wagner. So it's not like they're playing the same role, but Hampton is a guy that you would have thought would play this kind of role as well. So if one can do it, great. If both can do it, even better. But if you're going to get one out of these two to do it, you're in good shape. It just gives you more size. Like, one of the things we talked about was losing Jeremy Chin. Well, you add Will Harris. Will Harris is not the same size as Chin. Believe it or not, Madrano is more like their Chin was like 220. So is Madrano. So he's a guy, again, with good speed. You can put him in multiple roles. So that's why I say, like, you could see him contributing earlier just because he adds something that maybe that is enticing and maybe get him in a couple packages. But first things first, let's see how he can do when the pads are on in August and he's facing veteran NFL players, and then we'll go from there. But that's what he offers. And when you watch him, there's definitely oh, by the way, like, there are a couple of things. Like, you have a guy like that size, you can disguise things. One of the key things here for him is he was coached by Ken Norton Jr. at UCLA. So he had a great, obviously, scouting report on all those guys there, the guys that I've mentioned. But there was a deep connection. In fact, Madrano told us, like, 10 minutes before he was picked, he texted Norton and said, come get me. So he wanted to be here. And he really has a strong connection with Ken Norton. So Norton and guys like playing for him. So that's another benefit there. And when you watch some of these not perfect, there are definitely some times where you look and say, like, that's just good anticipation, good instincts, really nice job there. There was a play, I think it was against Rutgers, where you see him looking to his left, reads the running back, instant diagnosis, comes rushing up because he sees the guard coming out to get him and just beats the guard to the ball. Really nice tackle on the play. Then it's a couple of times you miss some plays, right? And that's because that's why he's there in the 6th round. So not perfect, but he does offer something that I think is enticing and that you can build on and then see, does he hit or not? So there you go. Jakori Krosky Merritt, another guy that to me is interesting because he did not play last year. He played one game for Arizona. The NCAA ruled him ineligible. It sounds like there was some confusion or a mix-up over what was what he thought was considered a redshirt year. He was at New Mexico and this happened and had a redshirt year, but he played 4 games. I guess it was kind of too many, so he was ineligible. The whole thing lingered all season. But there are a couple of things that stood out even during that period. So what stood out to Washington and to others was that he was at every practice and in every meeting, despite knowing he probably wasn't going to ever play again for them after that first game. Yet he continued to go. I think that speaks volumes about him. I think it says a lot about his love and passion for the sport. That too is important. And I think that when you hear people talk about him, they talk about the energy that he provides. In fact, big time effort guy. And I was reading a story by Melanie Friedlander. She covers the Steelers, I believe, but she was at the Shrine Bowl and talking about how watching him and just the energy that he had and talking to him and the energy he brought. But also, like, one thing she pointed out, like, you're watching him in practice and the way he would block for his quarterbacks in practice really kind of jumped out. So that's what you see. And the funny thing is, when you watch his film from like New Mexico, you also see that as well. There are a couple times like they played Utah State in one game, goes into overtime, but late in the game you see a few runs inside the 5, inside the 10, where he's blocking for his quarterback on some runs and throws some good blocks. He attacks people, right? That's what he does. One of the things that it's funny because I say, oh, he runs angry. So this is what he told us about his attitude running the ball. One of the guys he studied was former Alabama running back Mark Ingram, who Jakori grew up in Alabama, so he watched Ingram a lot, studied him, and this is what he said he picked up from him, and I think it describes his style very well.
Just being tough, being physical, making defenders not want to tackle you. That's the main thing that I took away from Mark Ingram, and I feel like that's the only way to play the position is just being violent and running with anger.
So he indeed runs angry. Just watch some film of him. That's what you see. He doesn't slow down, man. That's one of the things you notice. He is not slowing down when he sees people. He's going to cut and he's going to try and run over you, run through you, whatever. But he's a good one cut back. I just think that there's a good forward lean at times. He's going to lower his shoulders, run into you. There are times where he definitely runs a little bit more linear than you would like, especially it gets later in the game. I think he's a guy that could be part of a rotation. I don't know in the pass game. There's not a lot of evidence there. In protection, I felt like it was kind of inconsistent. There were definitely times where like that's a good pickup. Other times like not a good pickup. But again, block for the quarterback. So some of that is going to be technique because to me, it starts with willingness and desire. Then you can coach the other stuff. If you have that, and I think he does, then you can coach the other stuff. Then it's like, could he be a factor in the run game, in the pass game? Because we didn't see that. Can he catch ball? I don't know. I think you need to see more of that. And that'll be a question for him this year. If that's where he can develop. But is he a guy that could come in and help? Yeah, I think so. But like they have, you have Robinson, you have Eckler, you have Jeremy McNichols, and also Chris Rodriguez. And I think Rodriguez finished pretty well. But this is a guy that clearly is going to challenge him. And I think, then it's like, is he a guy that you were able to keep? He's got to prove it. But I do think there's some intrigue there because of, the fact that are they getting some kind of I don't know about a hidden gem, but maybe more of a mystery guy because people did see him at other places, but last year would have been a really big tell for him going to Arizona and playing a higher level of competition. He wanted to go there to face a higher level of competition. So they didn't get to see it. We didn't get to see it, of course. So are you getting a guy that would have been a really good player for Arizona? In this one game, he rushed for over 100 yards against his old team. And again, he ran pretty angry in that game. So is this a guy they get, or is this a guy that, and he's got good speed, 4.45 at his pro day, was the fastest of the backs I think at that pro day, Big 12 pro day. So he has speed, but will it be enough? Well, I think, wait and see, but as a 7th-round pick, I think it was a good pick. And so that's where you go. It's funny because speaking of speed, like with Lane, one of the knocks on him as a receiver is he runs at the same speed all the time. When you get to the NFL, you're going to have to change things up a little bit, but that's something that can be coached because Terry McLaurin that was one of the things early in his tenure where he had to work on that in that first training camp. That's one of the things that the veteran D-backs would tell him, like, you kind of know where you're going or what you're going to do because you're running the same speed for every route. So anyway, that can be worked on as a coach. But again, a lot of speed here, chance for impacts. We'll see. I mean, again, I like what Washington did here because it's kind of hard not to. I mean, in other words, like we don't know enough about what these guys can do, but I do like building the line. I do like adding a corner. I like getting a guy who adds speed. One of the things that I talked about this, get a dynamic running back or a receiver who can threaten with speed. Well, they got that. And then they got the running back later. So, but you added a guy to your offense, 2 guys to your offense, but 1 guy who gives you something that you needed a little bit more of with the speed, and he can return punts and possibly kickoffs. So, and again, a linebacker with speed who might have some coverage ability, which is another thing they need, even if it's just for a sub package. That's something to watch as well. So all in all, not a bad draft. We'll spend a lot of time talking about it. Again, I would say it's a solid draft, just not the volume, but maybe good quality. Time will tell on all that. So there you go. All right, folks, I'm starting to ramble on again, so that's time. I need to have some music playing to kind of yank me off the stage right now. I appreciate you guys tuning in all weekend. I'm getting a little bit tired, so I've got to go home and get something to eat and then fall and crash on the couch. So I appreciate you guys all the time. I'll be back on Tuesday with another episode. I will talk to you next time.